There is a stretch of land on the Arizona-Mexico border that the locals call the Devil's Highway. On a map, it looks like just another expanse of sand, cactus, and rock. But if you talk to the men who patrol it, the Border Patrol agents, the tactical units, the trackers, they will tell you a different story. They will tell you that the desert changes when the sun goes down. They say that the silence out there is heavy. It presses against your eardrums. And sometimes in that silence, you hear things that don't belong. You hear a coyote howling, but the pitch is wrong. You hear a baby crying in a place where no human could survive. Or you hear your own name whispered from the darkness by a voice that sounds exactly like your best friend. Tonight, we are opening a file that was never supposed to leave the classified archives of the Department of Homeland Security. This is not a story about cartels. This is not a story about smugglers. This is the transcript of Operation Coyote, a mission that took a specialized BORTAC unit, the elite tactical force of the Border Patrol, into the deep desert to intercept a high-value target. They went in with thermal cameras, night vision, and military-grade weaponry. They were the apex predators of that desert, or so they thought. What they found out there wasn't smuggling drugs, it was hunting, and it didn't leave footprints. I am Captain Nightwhisper. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and if you hear someone calling your name from the other room, do not answer. Because tonight we are tracking a Skinwalker. September 14th, 2014, 0200 hours. The Sonoran Desert doesn't cool down at night. It just changes temperature from unbearable to suffocating. The heat radiates off the rocks like an open oven door. I was the team leader for a 4-man BORTAC element. Our call sign was Sierra 1. We were operating 15 miles north of the border, in a sector so remote that even the smugglers usually avoided it. But our intel was solid. A cartel convoy had been spotted moving through a dry riverbed, an arroyo, carrying something valuable enough to risk the journey. We were equipped with PVS-14 night vision binoculars and Feliar thermal imagers. We moved in total silence, scanning the horizon. To us, the night wasn't dark. It was a world of green phosphor. Every lizard, every jackrabbit, every rock retaining heat glowed in our vision. Sierra 1 to base. We have visual on the target vehicles, I whispered into my comms. Down in the arroyo, about 300 yards away, sat 2 heavy-duty pickup trucks. They were blacked out, no lights, engines off. But something was wrong. Usually a convoy like this has sentries, guys with AK-47s scanning the perimeter. But there was no movement. The trucks were just sitting there, dead still in the moonlight. Hold fire, I signaled to my team. Something doesn't feel right. We advanced in a skirmish line, weapons raised. My boots crunched softly on the gravel. The closer we got, the more the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't fear, it was instinct. It was that primal alarm bell in the lizard brain that tells you are walking into a trap. When we were 50 yards out, the smell hit us. It wasn't the smell of gasoline or drugs. It was the smell of copper, thick, metallic, heavy blood. And underneath that, something else. A smell like wet dung or musk but rotten. Like an animal that had been dead in the sun for a week. Check the lead vehicle, I ordered Jackson, my point man. Jackson moved up to the driver's side door. He raised his rifle, peeked through the window, and then immediately recoiled. He stumbled back, nearly dropping his weapon. Jesus Christ, he hissed over the radio. Sarge, you need to see this. I moved up. I shone my tactical light into the cab of the truck. The driver was there. Or pieces of him were. He hadn't been shot. There were no bullet holes in the glass, no shell casings on the ground. The interior of the truck looked like someone had set off a grenade made of knives. The driver had been torn apart. His tactical vest was shredded like paper. His arm was hanging by a thread of skin. And the expression on his face, he didn't look like he died fighting. He looked like he died screaming. His eyes were wide, frozen in a look of absolute mind-shattering terror. I checked the second truck. Same story. 3 men in the back, all of them decimated, limbs twisted at impossible angles, throats ripped out. Cartel hit? Jackson asked, his voice shaking slightly. No, I said, sweeping my light over the ground. Look at the dirt. That was the detail that made my blood run cold. There were footprints around the trucks, but they weren't boot prints and they weren't animal tracks. They were bare feet, massive human-shaped bare feet. But the toes were too long and the stride was too wide. Whatever had done this wasn't wearing shoes. and it had walked right up to 4 armed men and torn them to pieces before they could even lift their rifles. Then my headset crackled. "Sierra 1, came a voice over the radio. "This is Base. Status report." I reached for my push-to-talk button. "Base, this is Sierra 1. We have a massacre down here. Targets are KIA. Cause of death is unknown. It looks like an animal attack." There was a pause, a long, static-filled silence. "Sierra 1, the voice from Base came back, but the tone was different. It sounded flat, distorted. "Repeat. Status report. Over." "I just gave you the status, Base," I said, annoyed. "Targets are dead. We are securing the area." "Sierra 1, the voice said again. "Status report. Over." I froze. The voice wasn't coming from my earpiece. It was coming from the darkness, about 50 yards to our left. Someone was out there in the bushes, and they weren't using a radio. They were mimicking the sound of our radio traffic with their own mouth. "Cut comms," I signaled. The order was unnecessary. My team had already frozen. Every barrel was pointed toward the cluster of mesquite bushes to our left. The desert was silent again, but now it was a heavy silence, the kind that feels like you are underwater. Then we heard it. "Status report. Over." It was a voice, a human voice, but it sounded wrong. It sounded wet, like someone was speaking with a throat full of blood. And it was loud, too loud for a human voice to carry that clearly without shouting. But the tone wasn't a shout. It was a flat, monotone mimicry of the radio operator back at base. "Identify yourself," I yelled, my finger taking up the slack on the trigger of my M4. "Federal agents, come out with your hands up." Movement in the brush. Through my night vision goggles, the green phosphor world shifted. Something stood up from behind the rocks. At first, my brain tried to make sense of it. It tried to tell me it was just a man, maybe a tall man wearing a ghillie suit or a poncho. But then it fully stood up. It was 7 feet tall, maybe 8. It was painfully thin, like a skeleton with skin stretched tight over the bones. Its limbs were too long for its torso. The arms hung down past its knees. It was pale even under the green tint of the NVGs. It looked naked, hairless, smooth. But the worst part was the head. It didn't have a human face. Where the face should have been, the skin was just smooth, featureless. No eyes, no nose, just a slit where a mouth might be. But as I watched, the slit opened, and I saw teeth, too many teeth. "Sierra 1, the thing said. But it didn't just speak. It played back my own voice from 30 seconds ago. "Targets are dead. We are securing the area." It wasn't just repeating words. It had stolen my voice perfectly. The inflection, the static, the slight breathlessness. It was a perfect recording coming out of a mouth that shouldn't be able to form human speech. "Open fire!" I screamed. 4 rifles cracked at once. The sound was deafening in the quiet valley. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like strobe lights. I saw the rounds impact. I saw the dust kick up off its chest. I saw black liquid spray into the air. It didn't fall. It didn't even flinch. It just stood there, absorbing 5.56 rounds like they were rain. And then it laughed. It wasn't a human laugh. It was the sound of a coyote yipping, mixed with the sound of a crying baby. It was a sound that scraped against the inside of your skull. The thing dropped to all fours, but it didn't crawl like a man. Its joints bent backward like a dog's legs. It moved with impossible speed, scuttling sideways into the deep shadows of the canyon wall. "Reloading," Jackson shouted. "Did you see that? Did you see its legs?" "Check fire," I ordered. "Eyes up, don't lose it." We formed a defensive perimeter, back to back. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. We were BORTAC. We were trained to fight cartels, terrorists, armed militias. We weren't trained to fight, whatever that was. "Sarge," whispered Ramirez, our medic, "look at the thermal." I flipped my optic from night vision to thermal mode. The world turned into shades of gray and white. I scanned the cliff face where the creature had run. Nothing, no heat signature. The rocks were warm, glowing white from the day's sun, but there was no biological heat source. It was like the thing was the same temperature as the air, like a cold-blooded reptile. "Where did it go?" Jackson asked. "It didn't go anywhere," Ramirez said, his voice trembling. "It's above us." I looked up. Perched on a rock ledge 20 feet directly above our heads was a white shape. It was crouching, staring down at us. And then it spoke again. But this time it didn't use the radio voice. It used Jackson's voice. "Help me," it said, in a perfect imitation of Jackson's terrified whisper. "Sarge, you need to see this." "Move! Go! Go! Go!" I didn't wait for another command. We broke formation and sprinted for the cover of the abandoned cartel trucks. As we ran, a rock the size of a bowling ball slammed into the ground exactly where Ramirez had been standing a second ago. The thing was strong. It was playing with us. We dove behind the engine block of the lead truck. The heavy steel offered some protection, but we were trapped. We were in a box canyon, with high walls on three sides. The only way out was back the way we came, through open desert. "Base, this is Sierra 1, taking effective fire," I screamed into the radio, requesting immediate QRF. "We have a hostile entity. We need air support." Static, just white noise. "Base, do you copy?" Then a voice came through the earpiece. "Sierra 1, Sierra 1. It was my mother's voice. I almost dropped the radio. My mother had been dead for 6 years. "Sierra 1, come home," the voice crooned, soft and sweet, but with that same underlying wet, guttural distortion. "It's cold out here. Come into the dark." I ripped the earpiece out of my ear. "Don't listen to it," I yelled to the team. "It's jamming the frequency. It's psychological warfare." "It knows us." Ramirez was hyperventilating. He was curled up in a ball, clutching his rifle. "How does it know us? How does it have those voices?" "Focus." I grabbed his vest and shook him. "We are leaving. We are going to execute a bounding retreat. Fire and maneuver. We make it to the extraction point." "We can't outrun that thing," Jackson said, peering over the hood of the truck. "You saw how fast it moved." "We don't have to outrun it," I lied. "We just have to hold it off until sunrise. These things, the legends say they hate the light." I didn't know if that was true. I was remembering stories my Navajo grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid. Stories about the Yi Nallushi, the ones who go on all fours. She told me never to say their name. She told me never to look them in the eye. She never told me what to do if one of them had you pinned down with an assault rifle. Wait, I looked at the ground near the truck. The dead cartel members. Their weapons were gone. The creature hadn't just killed them. It had taken their guns. A single shot rang out from the darkness. It wasn't the chaotic spray of an untrained shooter. It was a precise, single shot. The bullet punched through the windshield of the truck, inches from my head. "Sniper!" Jackson yelled. It was using a rifle. It had fingers dexterous enough to operate a trigger. It had eyes sharp enough to aim in the dark. We were pinned down by a monster that could run like a cheetah, mimic our dead relatives, and shoot like a sniper. And then the silence returned. But this time I could hear footsteps. Not running, walking. Slow, deliberate steps on the gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was coming down from the rocks. It was coming to finish the job. I checked my mag. 12 rounds left. The footsteps were getting closer. Crunch, crunch. "Jackson," I whispered, "do you still have the flares?" "Yeah," he breathed. 2 red stars. "On my mark," I said. "Pop the flare directly at that sound. Blind it. Overload its senses. These things hunt in the dark. Let's give it some sun." The footsteps stopped. It was right on the other side of the truck. I could hear its breathing. A wet rattling sound, like air passing through a fluid-filled lung. "Sierra 1, came the voice again. But this time it wasn't my mother, it wasn't the radio. It was my voice. "Open fire," the creature said, mimicking the exact command I had shouted minutes ago. "Open fire." "Now, now!" I screamed. Jackson stood up and fired the flare gun. Thump hiss. The magnesium flare exploded in the darkness, burning at 20,000 candle power. The canyon instantly turned blood red. The scream that followed was not of this world. It shrieked, a high-pitched, vibrating noise that shattered the glass of the truck windows. Through the blinding red light, I saw it. It was standing on its hind legs, shielding its face with those long, pale arms. Its skin was translucent, veins pulsing black underneath. "Move, move, move!" We broke cover. We sprinted toward the extraction point, running blindly through the mesquite and cactus. We didn't look back. We just ran until our lungs burned and our legs felt like lead. Behind us, the screaming continued, but it was changing. It was shifting into laughter. Maniacal, human laughter echoing off the canyon walls. We ran for 3 miles until we hit the main highway. A border patrol cruiser found us walking down the center line at dawn. We were dehydrated. We were covered in scratches. And we were missing 60 minutes of time that none of us could account for. They never found the cartel bodies. When the recovery team went back to the arroyo the next day, the trucks were there, but the bodies were gone. No blood, no drag marks, just empty desert. I retired 3 months later. I couldn't handle the silence anymore, because sometimes when I'm alone in my house and the TV is off, I hear it. I hear my own voice, whispering from the closet. Open fire, open fire. The official report for Operation Coyote lists the mission outcome as inconclusive due to equipment failure and heat exhaustion. Sergeant Miller's testimony was buried. The thermal footage was corrupted. The audio logs were erased. But the desert remembers. There are things in the wild places of this world that have been here much longer than we have. They watched us climb down from the trees. They watched us build fires. And they learned. They learned that the best way to hunt a human is to sound like one. So the next time you are out hiking or camping or just walking alone at night, listen closely. If you hear your friend calling for help from deep in the woods, if you hear a baby crying in an abandoned alley, or if you hear your own voice echoing back to you, don't investigate, don't answer, and for God's sake, don't look behind you, because by the time you realize the voice isn't human, it will be close enough to smell your fear. I am Captain Nightwhisper. Keep your eyes open, keep your mouth shut, and never trust a voice without a face. Good night.